So we're going to get started. I'm going to start with the minutes from May 15th meeting. Did anyone have a chance to look at them? Any questions or comments?
On the minutes, yes, definitely. Let me just pull out my comments. Page 2, drinking water action items. I don't think the question is we said that should the town ask more water districts like West Neck or Deering Harbor or Shelter Island Heights to promote greater island quality. I think we were talking basically about getting more data, baseline data. So I don't think we raised that as a question. I think we wanted that out, actually. And upon public request, that note, I think we figured we didn't need it.
No, we did keep that.
We kept that, oh, okay, that I wasn't sure about. And then, okay, then the other thing I have is on page 3, under wastewater. I wasn't sure that I understood that this was what we decided, establish a wastewater management district or local community districts that would facilitate single treatment systems. I think we talked about explore.
We talked about Suffolk County establishing a wastewater management district.
Right.
But that's different than
That is different than a local island district.
yes, that's different. That's different. And then I thought that there should be no reason to put in what's currently being considered. Unless we want to say we spoke about some of the pros and cons of a centralized system versus individual AIs. I don't understand the point that is made here, and the sentence doesn't even make. I think what we wanted is continue investigating methods to treat effluent from the buildings in the center. I don't think we need the sentence before it. I think we crossed it out.
Yeah.
You know, and then
In the following paragraph.
on the last paragraph. Yeah, on the last paragraph there, note, if you have a wastewater district allows you to use a tax bill, that's sort of, putting out a reason to use a wastewater district. That wasn't a discussion, that wasn't brought up in our minutes. That doesn't belong here.
No, I believe I said that. I think I said that out loud. Yeah, I did say that.
What is happening here, as I'm reading them, I understand what is going on here. So the minutes from this meeting are extremely complicated because we discussed a lot of things. So what she's touching on are all the different things that came up, because we did discuss the 19 milligrams per liter. We did debate whether or not to establish wastewater management districts countywide or locally. But in the final sentence for the wastewater, it says, continue investigating methods to treat effluent from municipal buildings in the town center. So
Established sounds different though, Meg. It sounds like we're making that an action item.
No.
So the whole question is, we discussed, it should put down, we discussed various methods. I think the minutes should be accurate. We discussed the various proposals that have, been floated. And that last note, if you have a wastewater district, use a tax bill, well, that's an argument for one position versus another. It's not.
I think that.
It's a point of.
Remember, what it was that we talked about, if we had a district, then we can get funding.
Right, right.
It wasn't about a tax bill.
That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you, John. That's more accurate. Right.
Well, when you have a district, you can, I think it allows you as a taxpayer to pay your, if there was a large capital improvement required for you to hook up or something like that, you can, because it's tax district, you can pay that over a 10 or 20 year period at no interest, low interest, funded by the town essentially. I think that's what I think I meant by it when I said it. But I know what you're saying
Well,
about
because the
the
question
grants.
was, why would we want to do that? What would be the incentive?
What's the
to have
point?
it?
Yeah, we're all doing
And so
IAs,
that's why it's in here
right?
as a
There are
note,
some reasons.
That would
but-
be the reason.
For
to do
example,
it.
maybe
Right.
that, for example.
Just clarify the minutes, that's all.
All right, so we'll rewrite or clarify these and we'll vote on them next time.
Thank you.
Don't we have to vote on what Petra added last time? Well, am I mistaken?
I think
We held up one section of minutes because Petra was going to add something. Did we vote on that?
we did on
Okay,
Monday.
wasn't sure.
We did.
Yeah.
We did both of the sets of minutes last
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think, any discussion or exploration should be stated as that versus conclusive,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Christina, can you make a note for Coco, just, thanks. Oh, she's on, that's right.
Appraisal of public comments submitted, next. So the comments that we've received to date are all posted up on the website. These are as of 15. And, we keep posting them before the meetings. Okay.
So, something, my last batch of comments was not included. I submitted them via email to you.
Yeah, yesterday. And I posted them in the comments yesterday, and these are as of the 15th, so that was the 21st.
18, yeah, that's on the 18th. Yeah.
They'll be on the next round. They won't be lost, they won't be going anywhere. All right. So, wanted to talk about the dates. So, we have a public forum set for June 16th, but I think it would be more prudent if we continued working on the action items for the housing chapter and the zoning chapter. And this chapter, if we don't finish them, because I think we need to be able to give that information to the consultant so that they can create a draft document for the public. So I feel like having a public forum with incomplete information doesn't make sense. I think that we should keep working on what we're working on and then have a public forum when we have a draft document.
One other way to do the public forum, though, you see, the public forum is a place to vet what are drafts, but it's also a place to receive input to go into the drafts in the first place. And this forum might inform the drafts, particularly issues related, to the natural environment, housing, and zoning. So it might be good to have it before the draft. I mean, the argument works both ways.
Yeah, and I'm just going back to the timeline that was submitted back in March by the consultants, and we talked about these topical area focus groups. So I guess my other question is I think we talked about those at one meeting.
But I didn't know that was broadly to the public. My view, that was more to the committees and the associations, for
Right,
instance, so.
right, but that's back to Lily's point about, I'm just looking at the visual here, right? Because we were going to talk about, the public workshop was month 6, which was that like July, August, something like that. So there was this virtual presentation of chapters and survey. And then we also had these topical area groups, which were kind of happening around now, right? So I think that gets back to Lily's point of where are we getting additional, because we haven't really, other than people writing their comments in, we haven't really had group input. So again, I'm just, and maybe Emily is on, or I don't know if Noah's on, but can somebody just run me through what those action items were and what their purpose was and what we were hoping to get from those?
Yeah, Noah, you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Noah.
I don't have I should have it, our timeline in front of me, because I just thought we were going to be talking about, some of the content. But just a brief overview of what a focus group is. and what, a public meeting is. They're definitely
A
different.
little louder.
Louder.
Noah.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll move my microphone. So just a quick update on what a focus group is and what a public meeting is, because they're different things. A focus group meeting would be with representatives of various committees and boards organized around a particular topic area, similar to what might be a chapter of the plan. So Parks and Recreation, you would have representatives from committees related to those groups. This way we could solicit information from the people that kind of understand it the best. And really that will help us to refine the plans. That is something that we can probably start to schedule and start to get on the books throughout the summer as we're developing these plans. So I can certainly work with the town on that. As far as the public meeting is concerned, it's something that we had initially scheduled for month 6, but we are kind of taking an approach. I think listening to the CPAC and these meetings has kind of shifted our timeline a bit, because we've really wanted to hear from you first before we revise the chapters. It was our hope that when we go back to the public, we would have had fully revised chapters, but we're kind of waiting to hear from you about kind of vetting some of the action items, other ideas before we produce a final draft. Not a final draft, excuse me, just kind of an updated draft, which will be edited. And so we're aiming to do, to have all of, the chapters done. And we've spoken to Meg and BJ about this, towards the end of July. And so it would be good at that point to do a public meeting to check in about some of the ideas and still capture new ideas. The plan won't be so far along that we can't incorporate new ideas as if they're worthy. But it seems like it would be a good idea to wait till we've had time to kind of vet everything, so we can, rather than just have another meeting where we're kind of haven't done any work and haven't advanced kind of the project. We want to make sure that we're in a good place where we can say, look, this is what we've heard. These are the recommendations so far. What do you think?
And so Noah, just remind me again to task 1.E, because I don't have your proposal in front of me, unfortunately. What did you mean by virtual presentation of chapters and survey?
Sure.
With particular focus on the survey.
So what we were thinking as a way to kind of make the public workshop the most, we were trying to come up with a creative approach, given that a lot of people may or may not be out here during the week and might not attend a meeting, where we could do basically a virtual presentation, and we'll we can go through the details at some point as far as we put it on a website, but we can go through each chapter, or maybe have a couple of chapters in one video, and after people watch that, they could answer a couple of questions. What did you think?
Okay.
Do you support some of these ideas? Do you have any additional comments? And so they could go through the chapters kind of piecemeal in a presentation that we give that goes through some of those action items. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So we would actually do some of the chapters in groups then. So we don't necessarily have to have the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have to be the whole thing all at once. We could kind of present the ideas in groups, and we can kind of continue to strategize that.
Yeah, understood that we need.
Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a conversation that happens, over the course of a month or two.
Okay. And so just in terms of like your point on the public forum, Meg, I'm just trying to see how this like plays out the next couple of months. Then if we're aiming for the public workshop much later.
Well, we need 2 more meetings after tonight minimum.
Right.
Okay.
I think
Before,
we
right?
need at least 2 more meetings to get
Yep.
through the action items that we
Okay.
have on our table. So.
Because we're down
That's
to now the
important.
last 2
That's kind of our
chapters.
priority, is we have to do the action items.
Yep.
Because that's the input that matters for the consultants to be able to do their job effectively. So,
Now, I had us on, in my calendar, I had a meeting that we established, of course, at the beginning of the year before everything changed.
Right.
For a public, for us to get together on the 12th, June 12th. So I'm hoping that's all on your calendars.
I don't have June 12th, I have
Oh.
June 16th.
June 16th,
June 16th,
mean-
I have that
and then
too.
June 26th.
right, that's what I have,
Yeah,
I don't know why.
right.
so
June 12th was supposed to be a public workshop originally, you know?
maybe
no?
originally
Yeah,
it changed.
June 16th is a Friday.
Yes.
That's, yeah,
Hard.
I just throw that out there as.
Yeah, and that's because the calendar gets tricky in June because you have Juneteenth on 19th.
Yeah, on the
It's a
19th.
Monday, you have 3 meetings
Right.
on the 12th, there's a 6 PM meeting on the 5th, so
Okay.
the Mondays are all kind of taken.
Is our plan to try to have these chapters done by June 16th? Because that's,
No.
okay, all right, because I was going to say, that's,
Continue working on the action items as the CPAC on June 16th and June 26th. So it won't be a public forum that day, it'll be a CPAC meeting
On the 16th.
on the 16th and the 26th. So we'll change that from a public forum to a CPAC meeting. And then the public
And-
forum will be at the end of July.
end of July. And then, is that public forum the virtual presentation, or is that something different? I'm just sorry for the clarifying
Because it kind
question.
of depends on how we get information to the consultants and how far they get on the chapters as to what chapters we want to start like rolling out. Like I would love to give a full draft document so people aren't confused, like Joanne said, where they're like, well, you didn't cover this and you didn't cover that. And it's because that chapter hasn't been presented yet. But what we can start doing, like Noah said, is talk to some of the committees, some of the focus groups for chapters that are, you know, kind of buttoned up.
And have those committees been determined, who they're going to be talking to, the focus groups?
I mean, we have a list of all the committees, but we haven't appointed them to chapters, so to speak.
We haven't
Because we haven't.
seen anything yet,
Yeah,
right?
so
I don't think that'll be for CPAC. I think that'll be for.
that'll be for the consultants,
And the
yeah.
task force. The guide. Yeah. It's kind of too detailed.
So Noah, does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, no, that sounds like a good plan. And I think, just to reiterate, these meetings are helpful for us, as you said, to kind of refine the action items. And I think there have been some really good discussions in the prior meetings. There are a lot of ideas where there's consensus, where, you say, oh, everyone's in agreement on this, let's move forward. But even for those items where there's consensus, it would be helpful for you to think about, because when we write this plan, we want it to be action oriented, and we're trying to kind of have a recommendation that's a little bit more detailed. So if you can think of specific things that you can do to kind of advance some of these ideas, that would be helpful as well. So, we really kind of want to focus on how to achieve the ideas in the plan, not just, even if there are things that everyone's in agreement on, just think about what can we do next in the short term and the long term. That's most helpful for us. As far as the writing of the plan, the content, what to focus in on and what not to, let us hopefully just kind of, we have the document, we're going to review it, we'll give it back to you and, to review, of course, before it becomes final. But comments on those things, it's almost like you're commenting on something that is, not necessarily the most current document. And unless there are really big things, general things that you think we need to be aware of, I think it's most helpful to focus on the action items.
Okay.
That's where it has its most power.
Gotten the demographics.
As I said,
I still have a lot of trouble thinking about action items as we're going to talk about housing if we don't see the demographic chapter first and foremost, not the quality of life, but basic facts and figures.
Well, I think the document that was produced before, it will be updated and refined, but there's a lot of good information in there that will help you. If there are specific things that you're looking at that you're unsure about, as far as I know that there's discrepancies between the number of part-time people who come out, but that number, to be perfectly honest, is not nailing down the exact number is not essential for a lot of the policy decisions. It's going to be an estimate no matter what, because it's not really a hard data source. The census doesn't look at that. It'll be an estimate, and we'll have to qualify it depending on what data that we use. So there's certainly things that we can refine and give our best guess, but what's in there is not that far off from what we are going to be able to find as far as updating with data, which we will do, but it's probably sufficient for now, I would say. Is that fair to say? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
we're looking for trends.
Yeah,
As much as anything.
Comparative data.
It's in there.
I mean, one of the questions I have, and Sean brought this up, I think at the last meeting, was the Southold plan, right? Which kind of gets to how we're showing the chapters, right? Which may get to this question of quality of life being too overarching. I mean, the other question I have for the consultants is sort of, what is the framework that we're using? Because I do think that is helpful. And I think, again, to Lily's point, like, what is the data that is overarching the entire plan? And how do we really feel good about that? Understanding it's directional, right? And it's never going to be exact. But I think those two things are really critical.
Well,
You know?
there's the hard data that we have, and then there's also, we can infer from other sources. And so
But we should see that, right? Because, and that
They're
should,
not creating new data, though.
no.
It's there. You know, it's in the chapters that we have
But
already.
What are we missing?
Something.
Action items have
action items should be linked to data.
data.
It should be
Absolutely.
referenced as a source in the action item. I don't know how you do action items without referencing data. I mean, that defies every piece of
So in
logic.
20 years, we're short 58 rental units over a 20-year period.
Based on
I don't
what
know
though,
where you
Faye?
get
Based on population, the population on Shelter Island has grown 11%. The housing stock has grown 47%.
Right.
So
the
how
data
are
that
we
we have
short
in-
on data? How are we short on housing? Like, that doesn't compute.
A median population figure, given the conflict.
So is this based on the
between
census?
2020
Yes,
census and
yes.
the others.
So do we not trust the census?
Not this year, not for 2020.
I'm going to say that even a
So what
median
do we
population
do?
shows that we've got over one and maybe 1.5 houses per person on the island. if you
That's a
look at
meaningless
full-time
data.
residents.
And
So, I mean,
You might have
we
built
have no-
some more houses, but they're all for part-time people. A lot of it.
I'm just.
Well, but we have to be able to stand behind action items that are based on data. It cannot be either politically driven, it can't be just qualitatively driven. There are
Go
certain,
home and get new data. I'll see you later.
Want to see
Yeah.
the data that is-
I don't think we need, I think we just have to use it to defend the action items. I don't think that's too much to ask.
If I can jump in, because we do these plans a lot, we are using data. Data comes in a lot of different ways. There's hard data. There's also conversations that we have with people. That's not necessarily something you can quantify, but it's important. The data is only available for certain things, and it doesn't always tell the story that you want. And if you rely too much on it, you really have to qualify some of the things. As you said, if you don't
You
trust
need
the
to
census.
note it. It needs to be noted and discussed and
Understood.
and defended. I
Understood.
mean,
Understood. But what I can say is a lot of the data and the trends we will go through and we will analyze. I don't think it should hold up this process for looking at action items. We can go back and we
so
can-
how
if
are
I
you
can- if you let me
developing? You're
finish.
developing an action item. Finish.
Wait, it shouldn't hold it up. It should begin the process.
Exactly.
It should start the process. It should inspire the action items and that's all we're saying. We're putting the cart before the horse. I
We
mean,
have-
I'm talking to Noah. I'm sorry. I
We
think
have-
we all hear.
We have
you.
a document though that has a lot of data there. So if there are specific things that you think are going to hold up the process that are really pivotal things, we need to dwell into that data. but it's not as if we don't have any data and to, that we're
Agreed.
going off of.
No, agreed. We just need to be referencing it as a part of the action items. I think many of us have been saying this for well over a year. And I think we all want to stand behind the actions that we put out there.
Right.
It's important to the population and the residents of Shelter Island, right?
So is the bottom line that we say that we understand that there's census data, that it's not accurate, and we're going to use what?
Well, we can make extrapolations.
Right.
We have a way to deal with.
90% of the
we have
housing.
asked,
We've done it.
It's in here. Exactly what information are you looking for that is not
here.
being provided? You need to be more
action items
specific
are not
because
being
it's too vague.
defended by data directly.
You're saying not, that we
Because
are
we're
not
coming up with action items.
Excuse me, one voice at a time.
Thank you, John.
All right, so if you'll let.
Time, let's do it, one voice at a time.
So if we have an action item, why have we come to that conclusion? We seem to be starting with action items instead of starting with what does the data tell us?
So is.
And then it's not referenced.
So Peter, here it is. It's just not in the format that you're advocating for, but the findings are here. This is a summary of a whole chapter. And then you come down.
I have been a consultant for 30 years. If I don't have the data to support action items with a client, I would be fired.
So
I'm just
having
going to
it,
leave it at that.
but having it, okay, but I'm serious. So having
Yes.
it half a page above, no
It
bueno.
needs to be notated, and we should be starting with, here are,
Notate where the data should be, what is missing.
It's not our.
Because whose job is it? If it's not your
They
job, it's
haven't
not
given
my
us
job.
data. We're not supposed to point.
they?
It's going back from the action item to the data. That's the other way. If you just want to support a set of conclusions,
So
then you find the relevant
reason
data to do it.
That
This
we
is
have
not,
this committee. The reason we have this.
we're not
committee
supposed to be
is-
statisticians.
I never said you should.
This is why we have a
so that you
consultant.
can write, okay, we're trying, okay, I'm going to start again. So as a committee, our job is to give our input. I have received no comments since the last meeting on any of the things that we discussed from anybody. I received one very vague comment from you, Lily. We need to add an action item about increased commercial water activity. That was it. Very vague. I can't do anything with that.
We were supposed
So-
to have a section on it. I think, BJ, you were going to bring in something. That was 2 months ago. Someone was supposed to do.
Tardy. But anyway, let me just answer you that mild accusation. I actually sent it to the consultants. It's already done. I've gone through WMAC, sent it to the consultants. They'll choose where to incorporate it or how to incorporate it into the plan, either as a chapter on its own or part of other chapters, plural, and then you'll get to see it, along with everybody else.
I mean, because with what you're saying, we should just stop what we're doing. We should give everything to the consultants, let them write the draft, let them present it to us,
And ask them.
and then we can move forward.
No, we asked for a basic demographic, we asked for a basic demographic chapter first that would have units, populations, every age, income, trends over time. We had that at least with the first set of consultants, but we had problems with it, whatever happened. But we have not seen this in over 2 years. And so we don't know what we are working with.
We've brought that up many times. It's the foundational chapter for
A foundation.
anything. And I think that it's a fair question. I think we all should be able to stand behind that.
The demographic chapter is something that we're working on. We're not ready to, we haven't worked on it. I was under the impression that this meeting was supposed to be talking about a separate topic. So it feels like we are kind of going backwards. I don't think it's not, we're working on the demographic chapter that will be presented to you. That's not being kind of, we're not.
I'm going to reference Sean's comments again, and looking at the Southold comprehensive plan, they start with how they put it together, and then the very first chapter is demographics.
Demographic.
If you look at just about every comprehensive plan, I'm guessing Noah, the ones that you've done as well, they start with demographics.
Yeah.
We
would-
have been requesting this even before you came along. This has been a continual request. This is not a
And
new
no one's
request.
denying you demographic information.
It's here.
We created an entire chapter of demographics, which you disagreed with, which is fine. And now we have consultants who are working on demographics. So you will get a demographics chapter. You will get the information you're requesting. The census numbers aren't going to change. The census numbers are what was in the document to begin with. I don't know how much change you expect to see, but we'll see what happens.
And,
All right,
and
I would
also-
just ask for it to be prioritized as we've been
It
asking.
is. They're working on it now.
This is
This
this is the next chapter that we're working on. And then I just want to also mention that it's a unique process. Typically, we would do the demographic chapter first. So you are correct in that.
Yep, thank
It's a
you.
This is a unique project in that we have a lot of work to begin with. And so we've kind of taken that work, assessed it, and then kind of paused a little bit on the writing of the chapters so that we could meet with you and really discuss some of the issues. I understand, the need to kind of see the demographic data. It was our understanding that that was, more or less, closer than I guess it is to being kind of factually correct. We will look to update data where we can and see where we can find, new data sources. But I didn't think that that chapter should hold up any of these discussions. We can still talk about other things, in my opinion. But I understand your concern, and we're working on the demographic chapter.
All right, thank you.
Great. All right, natural environment action items.
Okay.
Wait, did we establish dates?
The 16th and the 26th.
Thank you. You don't want to consider the 12th? I'm just checking.
No, the 12th is so booked.
Oh, it is?
There is no time in this
Oh, thank you.
room on the 12th.
All right.
I have one or two questions. Are we going to start with the printed comments first? I will wait.
Yeah, where do we need to go?
Start.
No. So, what I did was I went back through the action items that we did on last Monday, and I cleaned up some of the notes and comments. Lily, I looked up some of the things that you brought up. So I wasn't sure what some of your references were to. But Christina, may I share my screen?
By the way, my references, Meg, were just to that combined action item back packet of about 44 pages that listed items from 1994. I didn't go further back than that. And then the 2008. So I just gave you the reference number. I never, for example, looked at water protection management plan.
So what I was trying to say, Lily, was for example, question number 8.
Yeah.
Educate on and encourage the proper use and disposal of lawn and other household chemicals. So you had a note, develop a centralized inventory of environmental information, and I had look up 2008 recommendation because you said it was in 2008.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So what I did find was this thing where it said initiate a study to list endangered, rare, or island unique plants and animal species on a town list. Conduct basic environmental assessment of at least the more prominent habitats like fresh ponds to provide a scientific baseline for future reference and monitor periodically. And so then my question was, is this what you were referring to?
I didn't know, but I think we could add lots of things to an environmental assessment. It just was something that said had not been completed or done. I think it could be broader and very specific. The question is, what was the original idea? What is good in the plan? So some sort of environmental assessment could include watersheds. It could include everything. I mean, how narrow do we want it? I don't know. If it overlaps with other issues,
Okay.
you know, okay,
Now
now I see.
Right. So then I went to the next one that people had questions about was the oil tanks. And we do have a town code that requires that people remove them whenever they do major renovations or construction. But we don't have town code that states that you have to remove it on property transfer. So I don't know if that's something that we want to keep in here as a concept. But we also don't have a record of who has underground oil tanks, so it's sort of hit or miss. It's easier to enforce when it's being done with construction.
Right.
Which is why I think it stayed that way.
I think someone wrote a comment in about oil tanks in our comment sheets. We might find that if we can quickly.
enforce it with a property transfer, that it has to be part of the inspection.
You could add it, if we just did we're looking at doing a updated CO on property transfers. So if we do pass that you've required an updated CO, then we could make that part of it. So it could be added, yeah. So that was just.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And people had questions about it because Lily was like, isn't this already mandated? And it partially is, not quite the way it was recommended in the action items. So I just put all that information in.
Oh, I think Jan Sudol may have had something about mandating removal of an underground fuel oil tanks within 3 years, whether property transfer or not, and perhaps create a financial aid program.
Right.
So, I mean, we can expand that if we want. It's an important,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is we have no records of who has underground tanks and who doesn't. So it would just be a good faith that people are going to do it.
any comments from anyone?
Can I add something to this? Right?
Yes, Jan?
Yeah, I understand that the town doesn't have a record who has oil tanks or not, but perhaps a program to be created so there are financial incentives for people to, so the town pays for it, or maybe pays even more than the cost. And then people will come out from the woodworks to replace those oil tanks. Okay, so you don't need to have a registry to accelerate the removal of the tanks.
Okay.
I mean, that would be like similar to WQI program.
Okay, that's an idea. Another concept that was brought up was developing wellhead protection zones for the areas of recharge for the wells of each of the public water systems. So that would be like for Deering Harbor, West Neck, Water Shelter Island Heights, to have a 200-foot sanitary radius of property owned by the water supplier. So
That's already county mandate.
it is. But then there was a recommendation that
I think it's 250 now. It's not even 200
it is,
anymore.
yeah, they've expanded it, which, so then there was a recommendation that maybe we should incentivize homeowners who live within that 200 to 250 area to upgrade their sanitary systems to IA systems and kind of make a priority list for them because they're almost, they're the closest to contaminating the, public well systems. So that was a recommendation. And then another idea that had come up was that if it's an undeveloped parcel, that maybe CPF should look at purchasing it for water protection. Because then, if it's an undeveloped parcel, then 200 to 250 feet of a public well, then it would probably be better preserved than developed. But that was just an idea that someone had brought up. So I put that on the list.
Yeah, when CPF talks water protection, it's often only in the context of recharge. But this is as important.
Right.
And maybe should be noted, yeah.
And then the next one, Lily, you had brought up town wetlands, Z31 and Z32 from the 2008 comp plan. So I pulled those up and I put them in here. So one of them is identify all the Shelter Island wetlands and the 75 and 100-foot setback lines on the GIS map, which is, I think, a good idea. And then a town wetlands map should be produced, as not all town wetlands are included on the DEC wetlands map. Some of the more seasonal ones don't show up on DEC because when they're dry, they don't necessarily count them.
But that's, that's, you can't just say do that. You know what I'm saying? We'd have to say, I think we'd have to say regular update.
Okay.
You can't just do that one and done.
Right.
That's just too fungible, too changeable.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what this kind of leads into, because GIS is a very cool tool for us to have, and it can be very useful, but we need somebody to
Manager.
update it and manage it on a very regular basis, because there's a lot of data coming into the town that could be mapped on GIS.
Town engineer, maybe, I'll just put this in here.
Right,
We've been regularly using interns
Yeah.
to actually input almost all this data.
right.
And we have talked in here about a hydrologist as, so either on staff or as a consultant, but a regular one who becomes Shelter Island knowledgeable.
Definitely.
So, that would be a good use of GIS and a good source of data. And then some of the other things that are in there have kind of already been addressed, but I listed them so we could see them. One of them is MS4 should provide for continued runoff protection of wetlands, and our MS4 has been pretty well done and followed through with. I mean, there's only a few spots that still go overboard, and it's because there's really no way to kind of prevent that unless you catch it further up.
You have to catch it more
And
further up.
so those are the trickier areas, so don't work
John, how
on it.
many dry wells do you think are on Little Ramp? Along the road?
No idea.
That's homework. Next time you come up, take a look along the road, just let me know how many dry wells are down the center of Little Ramp.
Oh, you mean along the road?
On the road. Yep,
I don't think there are any.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, we have a lot of those areas where we should be getting that groundwater in. So take the center of Little Ramp. How wide is Little Ramp? 1,000 feet wide, maybe, so 500 feet on both sides,
Yeah.
right? So it's 500 days if you get it at the street before it goes overboard onto the creek,
Yeah.
right? That's why you want to get that water in the middle of that whole area. A lot of those areas shed through people's yards, and then they end up overboard. So you really never get a chance at even using it. In a day, it's overboard.
That's good.
So that's why it's important to put a lot of the storm drainage
That's good.
up higher where you can actually get the water down into the ground.
That's good.
Yeah,
Is there
I mean,
any area that we've
They're
had,
all over the place.
Yeah.
is that map?
Yeah, we have, I think, eight plus over 800 structures in the ground.
Okay,
But we have a long way to go if we want to protect water. I mean, half of it, they say, is, running off.
yeah,
We should get that half.
yeah, right.
Or at least especially in areas.
At least a quarter, yeah, and it'd be interesting to see like what the
A quarter of a
improvement
billion is
is.
a lot.
Since they've been put in, like what the improvement has been, right?
Oh, it's been a lot. I mean, there has been a lot of improvement, but we have room for improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wouldn't want to sell this short and
yeah.
by any way saying that we're done.
Oh, yeah, no, we're not,
Okay.
there's still, yeah.
And who puts those?
Town usually.
The next one was consideration should be given to establishing a policy which encourages the removal of inland water bulkheads to allow for the reestablishment of beach and wetlands in circumstances where no structures are endangered. That one's sort of challenging because most of the bulkheads that we have are, pre-1970. And because they exist, other lands exist.
Right.
They've kind of shaped the contours of the island.
And they're allowed to be redone, in place,
You're not allowed to put
DEC.
in new bulkheads on
Yeah.
where they don't exist, but the ones that are there can be maintained. So, I mean,
To
that's,
leave this in is innocuous, in my view. Consideration should be given. It's almost the weakest way you can say this.
Which action point is that?
22,
22
22.
C3,
C3.
because there's.
The numbering has gotten a little funky.
Yeah, the formatting on this always goes crazy on me.
23.
Oh,
I'm sorry, 22,
Oh,
and then point C3. Right? Am I right about
It's
this?
23, yeah.
No, it's 22.
I
So-
surrender,
Oh, yours says 23. Why does mine say 23?
because I typed something above.
Ooh.
I know, it's automatically doing it, I'm
All right.
sorry.
So here's one of the things though in that, Meg, is that out at the end of Brenda Parkway,
Yep.
where it goes straight out and then it goes out to that little short, that end. I tried to get the DEC to allow us to take the sand from the end of Shell Beach and bring it back to that point, which is like halfway. It's going down towards Shell Beach from there. And they wouldn't let us put the sand there to actually start to re-nourish from the beginning.
Right.
So it came to my attention that the bulkhead height there used to be 3 feet. You could jump from the bulkhead down to the ground.
Yeah.
And now it's almost a 10+ foot jump.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're losing all that. And one of the strategies, they said, oh, well, you could put like some riprap at the toe of the bulkhead to kind of slow the water down there.
You could put some what?
Or you have to, some riprap, some, I'd say, rocks to do something.
Right.
So, I mean, beach nourishment or waterfront renourishment is something that would be important for us
Right.
to look at. So,
So maybe consideration should be given to renourishment.
That's
Yes.
good. Or
Right,
No.
instead of removal
Yeah.
of,
This whole issue is a
Putting
result
like
of the bulkheading.
right.
Right.
So the more bulkheads you have, the less nourishment will take place.
That's, it won't happen.
Pardon me?
It's not gonna
I was
happen.
just gonna say,
Right.
Really.
yeah,
At this point, right. So rip the bulkheads out and then what happens happens.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, but
so
you're right,
they
that's-
bulkheaded the bottom of Snake Hill up on, you know,
That was
south.
all new in the last.
That's all new. So now that nourishment of everything that was coming down there is really gonna stop unless it's spilling over the top of the bulkhead.
Right, so, you know, Crescent Beach is now gonna become more stony and pebblier and less sand because of that.
Right.
It's a
Because of the
shame.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay, I sort of put that in there.
Same issue with Real Point, we're talking about maybe spending lots of money on Real Point, but the real issue is that very last house we had
Yeah.
with its groins. that
Can I
go
do
up
that,
there,
though?
That's what's causing it. If you
I'm on the share.
spend the money and buy that house and rip out the
I'll copy this and
bulkheads,
repaste it in there, okay?
Then that way the sand from the bluffs will be washed that way and keep it.
I don't think there's any more, I think that's all bulkheaded almost all the way
I
around.
saw that and noticed it's almost, it's just, it's
Yeah.
a shame. It's really a problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's where we end up with that struggle between people losing their property to nature, and that's sort of just the
It's
natural
only a
order of
property
things.
For a short time. We're
I
not
know,
here
we're
very
only
long,
renting.
guys, you know. We
We're
think
all
you are, but
renting.
we're not, so.
Yeah.
Or maybe we
Hasn't-
need like a marine guy to come in at some point and say, or analyze this, or the Army Corps,
I was gonna say
where we
the
need a
Army
bunch of small groins that come off of these rock groins, that come off of these bulkheads that never gonna rot and go away, that would start to slow the littoral drift of that sand down.
It
So
just
that's
stalls
not so
shells
fast.
behind it, that's the problem. You
Yeah.
know, they really don't help.
Well, something's gotta
It
slow
just
it down.
leaks out behind, you know.
So we have a bulkhead behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, it's becoming an issue.
Mhm.
Is that all state or federal?
Well,
State?
it's town land.
Okay, Town.
Town land. Yeah, it's all.
A town
It's town and
requested,
private.
town requested from state? Are there federal sources as well?
Well, I
So
mean, if we,
We're talking with the Army Corps for Real Point.
right. Yeah,
But I don't know if you're gonna get bulkheads to be removed now
right,
and not protect people's homes.
yeah.
Because that's what they're at the point.
But
Yeah.
15 years ago, the Asia Conservancy, we had a big study with Peconic Land Trust. Everybody on the Peconic Estuary Program was a moratorium, no more bulkheads anywhere. We have to stop them because they're really causing the problem.
Right,
And that's just sort of got, oh, well, we need one here, we need one there. And people's lawyers were very powerful. Pretty soon we had bulkheads being built everywhere. So that did not last.
so I'm thinking that this concept isn't gonna work.
Well,
I mean,
you really have to get the sand back to where it started.
right,
You know, there's a few
Any
places that happens.
precedent from like other islands like Nantucket or anywhere else that have done something?
What the problem is that the
Right, 'cause
county
some
doesn't want to
they're-
pay to move it that far. They'll move it onto Shell Beach,
Yeah,
but they don't want to move it, you know, they don't even want to move it all the way to the beginning of Shell Beach. They only want to move it to the beginning or the middle,
okay.
because they got to pay, you know, it takes money to move it to the end. But if they got it to the end of Shell Beach, it would take that much longer for it to get back down again.
Yeah,
This is just the length of a pipe, you're pumping it through a pipe, right?
They're cheap.
Actually,
so what are we saying there then?
so,
Explore this.
I mean, we can explore it, look at different options.
Yeah, that's,
Sure.
So I have
Back to your
consideration should be given to nourishment. This policy may require the encouragement of the removal of inland water bulkheads to sort of
Right.
very wishy-washy
But I
because
think
it's
also, to
respected.
Jay's point, like,
Yeah.
if you are working with organizations like the Army Corps of Engineers for possible plans and solutions,
Mhm.
right, you want to sort of,
The bigger projects,
Yeah.
like the causeway, making sure the causeway doesn't wash
Yeah.
out. Real Point, trying to figure out a more permanent solution than yearly dredging. Things like that. They're more interested in things that protect large areas of high value. So the reason why they do Real Point and the Causeway is because you have, what was it, something like an estimated $3 billion worth of value in Columbus Harbor. So it's protecting those assets.
Is there another, like,
The Army Corps just kind of replenishing the sands on the perimeter of the beach, it's not going to be high on
There's no
their priority
county
list.
similar kind of?
County has a dredge, they come out and dredge it annually every couple of years based on the need.
Yeah.
But, it's one dredge trying to service all of Suffolk County, and
Yeah.
it's not enough.
All right, so then the next thing that was on this action item, this from 2008, was that the town needs to address use of pesticides in the near shore overlay district and near wetlands. So I actually deleted that because we have no jurisdiction over pesticide use. It's strictly regulated by the New York State DEC. So we can't do anything with that except educate. So I know we have an action item up earlier on about educating people. So that's why I deleted that. All right. The next one, the criteria for processing and granting variances on small lots where road and wetland setbacks are requested needs to be reviewed, as the continued granting of such variances will erode the wetland code and as the island approaches full build out. So in cases where both a lot line setback and wetlands variant permit is required, the current sequence of applications needs to be reviewed, as the decision on such cases should involve all setback issues and not be separated into two separate processes. As there are over 100 parcels where these issues could arise, the criteria for variance granting, permitting, and cross relationships needs to be reviewed and determined. Ultimately, the impacts of any such development arising from a variance permit on the immediate neighborhood and the entire community, be it direct or by means of precedents, should be considered against the goals of the comprehensive plan versus to rights of the property owner. And then it goes into that they need, hardship notices shouldn't be of their own making. So if you purchase a property or a lot knowing that it'll require variances and special permits to build the house of one's choice with significant negative impacts, the assumption should be made that the hardship is self-imposed. So that's kind of commenting on the process as it stands and what changes we should make so that it's a more comprehensive look at the property and the
Hard,
request.
This is anything in the near shore
Yeah.
overlay. So we're basically, are we saying, just to summarize, are we saying that we do not want more development in the near shore overlay?
No, this is a case of, I think this is a really good example. We had a property where they went before the ZBA first, a waterfront property, and the ZBA did not want an encroachment of that front yard setback, which meant the development this development, speaking of one house, one they wanted to occur was going to then have to occur in the wetland.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, so, well, maybe if there was a discussion.
So then the next board reviewed it and said, no, get that out of the wetland.
Right.
Pushed into the front yard setback. So now you have,
These,
Isn't,
they're not that many, but when they come up, they should be a coordinated effort.
isn't this relevant, though, to the recent switch of jurisdiction from the town board
In what way?
to the voluntary, to the appointed committee to make decisions on these areas?
They make recommendations.
Pardon?
They would make a recommendation back to the board. They're not going to,
it's the same, no, it doesn't.
it's going back to the town board, ultimately.
No, ultimately go to the town.
I mean, if it's, because if it's a variance special permit kind of situation,
Okay.
it would end with the board.
Thank you. Good.
But this doesn't have to necessarily just be for nearshore overlay. This could be anywhere where someone's asking for significant side yard variances
Yeah.
or setback variances.
Yeah.
It could, be anywhere on the island. But if you're asking for multiple variances, then it should be a coordinated review is kind of what this is saying.
I'm gonna get that.
More so, I'll just add at the end.
That's key.
And some of this, I think, was developed in the special permitting process. But it's kind of a recommendation to review that. And this is the, 2008 version. The next one was reconsider the sequence of applications with the town, New York State DEC and others, giving the town first review, which approval can be contingent upon approvals from other required authorities. And then in 2008, it was their view that following this sequence encouraged home rule and reduces the probability of applicants being confused about town code versus DEC, Army Corps of Engineers process, and using DEC or Army Corps of Engineers approval as a wedge to overcome town positions. So that was a recommendation from 2008. So I don't know how people feel about that one. So it's kind of like reordering the sequence. Now we require that people get their DEC and Army Corps approval before they come to the town.
And then the town makes a change to the plan, and you have to start all over again as the applicant.
Oh,
That's kind of a, government at its finest.
Yeah, but then it's, it does avoid the town approving something that then gets denied by the DEC or Army Corps. And then you end up with that
Yeah.
jurisdictional issue. I think it's more common to have to get the New York State DEC and Army Corps before you get the town. Because even with some county things, you have to get DEC approval before you can get county approval. So it's kind of like those state, county, town is sort of the hierarchy of approvals.
Which
So,
makes sense because we can be stricter, but we can't be weaker.
correct. So I think it's kind of okay the way it is.
So strike this.
That's what I was thinking. John, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I just was thinking that when I was on the planning board, we developed a whole system of trying to analyze this within the town board at that time, decided to vote no on that. That was the idea, is that people would come before the board, present their plan, we analyze it for them, help them understand what they need to do, how they need to change things before they went and made any application anywhere. And so it was like a,
Pre-approval.
A pre-conference.
not a, I shouldn't use the word.
It's like a pre-conference or like
Yes. Early in the
yeah.
planning stage, because then at least we could then streamline it and direct them how to make it happen. And we had that all codified, what we were gonna do, and then the town board said no.
I like that suggestion better than this suggestion. Have a pre-application conference to see what the rules and regulations are that you have to apply, like have to adhere to. Because I think a lot of people start their application not understanding the parameters that they have to work within.
You're in love with your architect, he's got this beautiful plan, and then you're already committed. You may come to the town first and find out what's gonna
It
work.
happens more and more with doc applications as the docs become stickier and stickier.
Yeah.
These docs have been built,
Yeah.
that they come in for a pre-application conference.
Right.
So maybe that's the
So this is
encouragement.
all residential, commercial development?
It's all residential.
It's pretty much residential. There's not much commercial development.
Yeah, they're really,
Like, because almost everything's pre-existing, non-conforming.
Yeah. I like that idea of the pre-application.
Yeah, you got it in there, Mark? Right, okay.
And that would now come to, just to clarify, which committee? Where would that go
it would
first?
depend on what they're applying for.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean, so if it's a business and they're doing a special permit because they're modifying a structure, then it would go before probably the planning board, the zoning board, and the town board. So maybe you would have one liaison from each group saying, these are the rules that we apply to this application.
Okay.
So if you have to go before multiple committees, maybe you have one person from each committee sit there, give you guidance on what the regulations are you have to abide by.
but
The way we originally set it up was that you come to the planning board first, the planning board would be the board, the entry point. And then we would then direct them, well, you need to go to the ZBA for this one, or you need to go there, this is gonna be a town board thing. You go back to building department, you're not dealing with the basic issues of the structure or whatever, we could direct them that way.
Right.
We
It actually creates
we
some
set it up and we
efficiency.
were the
Collection.
port of entry.
Which is one of our guiding principles.
That's good. All right, so I'm just gonna stick that in there as a. Okay. And then the next one was, the town adopt a policy of using an outside consultant to mark wetland boundaries or check if a question arises of the boundaries shown by the applicant, the cost being borne by the applicant.
right.
Well, we sort of did this in the most recent wetlands review, requiring a consultant to check to make sure that the wetlands buffer has been updated and installed correctly. So, I mean, it was kind of an extension of that, having an outside consultant mark the wetlands boundary. Although most people have to have that done to get a
But that's
survey
something different,
anyway.
marking the boundary before you construct or do anything versus after the fact, now your plans in place, so. really two
Mm-hmm. Well-
different things.
For all of these, you require an updated survey with a new wetlands markout before you can move forward with the project. So it's kind of built into the process.
Is it codified a new wetlands determination at that point, or is it just a new survey? There's a window of time, how long those things last, I don't
Usually
know.
flagging, they have to do the flagging in
Right.
the survey.
Okay,
Because, the wetlands do move, they're living,
right.
and they do move.
I mean, most construction projects are probably no more than 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Most.
Yeah, and I think that there's a 2-year or 3-year window in which you have to have
There's
that.
also a time limit on how long that wetlands permit lasts.
Right.
Yeah, that's-
It's 2 years,
2
the
years.
permit lasts 2 years. So that's kind of the window you have to work within.
Maybe instead of saying outside consultant, maybe a surveyor. I don't know if that's outside consultant feels a little kind of vague to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or anybody could hang their shingle out.
Be a wetlands consultant, whatever that,
environmental.
environmental website.
And then the next one is the criteria for location, size, materials, and possibility of docks and bulkheads should be part of the wetlands review process.
Isn't that part of the plan, the permit application?
It is. So, I mean, I think this was updated after 2008. This was the 2008 recommendation. But when we look at wetlands, it's all in there. So I'm just gonna. And then the last one in this was an appointment of a part-time environmental enforcement officer should be considered. So that's someone to look for violations and some code enforcement, really. Which
is strictly focused on environmental issues, which really are very different than other codes.
True.
I mean, if you're gonna morph it into somebody, it would probably be like the Bay
Bay
Constable or
can see from
somebody.
the water.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. I'm just gonna add a note.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess maybe question mark, how do others do that? Like,
Yeah.
again, like,
Or
is there
do that.
context for, right? What's been successful, what hasn't?
Some of it gets generated through the building department.
So does it become like a shared responsibility?
A lot of it comes.
Maybe, as things, as everybody's looking at climate and environment differently, right?
Sometimes we'll just note and then pass it on to the DEC.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
evaluate it. And
Yeah,
decide
so it
what
might be
is.
just looking at processes
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
current.
And just reminding them that that's within their
Yeah.
purview. The next item, Lily, that you had noted was Z32, and that was from the 2008 recommendations. And this is regarding geothermal. It said mechanisms need to be established for the collection of well construction data on existing geothermal systems, including but not limited to total depth and estimated range of thickness, yield, drawdown, soil strata, and saltwater interface. And then depending on that data analysis collected on the existing systems, a sunset provision should be considered to phase out some or all of the systems over a period of time. And that's because currently in our code, they are prohibited because there's concern about that saltwater interface with the freshwater aquifer.
What about
That makes
horizontal?
sense. That's a good question, because this really, in my mind, is referring to vertical.
Yeah.
Right, but that doesn't codify that, so this becomes an issue if someone wants to come here, wants to do a horizontal and geothermal.
Well, all geothermal is banned right now, horizontal and
That's what I'm saying.
vertical. I know,
Horizontal
but
is 7 feet down.
that's what the code
Caretaking
states. I mean, I
was-
understand,
It's just
yeah.
other
That's
engagement.
why we.
So I don't feel like I will
Really causing a lot
Yeah,
of
if I leave.
expense we
Yeah.
don't need to
That's
have.
right. I don't think.
Or
All right.
costing us-
So the systems too, isn't there a
Staying a
gas
little bit
system?
longer.
Yeah. Whatever
Where
you
you
can do.
bury basically a
Yeah.
gas, natural gas, not natural gas, but some
Like an inert.
non gas that actually is in the loop.
Becomes a heat pump, basically, we
Right.
use soil, rather than air to gas, it'd be a.
I mean, it seems like when they were developing this, it was mainly focused on water recirculation
Right.
and concern for the aquifer that way. And
Right.
Yeah.
But maybe we should really be looking at the new science. It's been
Yeah.
a long time.
We have been,
Right.
with the WAC has been looking at this, and so the consensus there, although no action has been taken or recommendation given to the town board, is that vertical really should not be considered at all on this island, should keep, but the code should be, but we should probably explore horizontal, but even there, it has to be, it's not a broad brush. You can't do it everywhere, even a horizontal, everywhere on Shelter Island. You just can't. I mean, there are places where it's just too shallow.
Geothermals.
Right.
Yeah.
It's their job to just maintain it and make sure that.
And air-to-air heat pumps are getting more and more efficient, that this actually within 5 years might even be a
Right.
a moot point.
Probably
Yeah.
before 2008.
Yeah.
So this is a topic that we should probably figure out.
Well, you're
Yeah.
working on it, right?
The WAC was looking into it, yeah.
It is.
Maybe we could just put some sort of note in that
They're looking-
determined by the WAC's research determinations, we can then
Right,
Yes.
modify this.
right. But it should be revisited,
Right.
as it says, yeah. There was a new resident on Ram Island who wanted to incorporate it into his, he had tore down a structure and was rebuilding and wanted to do a heat, geothermal. But,
There is a contained horizontal,
yeah,
where you put it in basically a fish pond liner.
yeah,
The soil and it all stays contained within that unit.
right, exactly. That's what you're saying. I think it was even gonna go under a tennis court or something in this case, but we couldn't change the code. We didn't have enough data yet to say yes.
Yeah. And then the next comment that we had was continue to implement the Shelter Island Watershed Management Plan. People had questions about the plan, they hadn't really read it, so I did post it on the CPAC page under discussion items, so it's there if people want to see it. I did make a little note that we may want to consider updating the plan since it was completed in 2014, but it's pretty thorough, and most of the changes that have happened since 2014 have happened at a county level regarding IA systems. So it's kind of just like a small add into this much larger plan. So check it out, see what you think, and then if you have any recommendations, we can add those.
That's a Nelson, open Voorhees.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just noted that I put that in there. Oops, what did I just do? Wet row.
Did you say that you posted that plan on the,
It's on the comp plan website under discussion items.
okay.
And then the other things I had highlighted was just monitor the county referendum process as it goes on. That was the IA systems. Okay, and then the next action point, Lily, that you had brought up was S6, the capacity analysis. So I essentially copied and pasted this section because there's a lot to it. You know, studies have been done about water and things like that. So we might want to see how much of this is really still applicable, because the GIS has captured a lot of this information. So some of the recommendations were, under the direction of the Water Management Committee, develop a program to expand the database on our aquifer by increasing the number of test wells or rotating readings to increase coverage in sensitive areas. I think we still have only like 8 test wells, but we now have like
Real-time
monitoring on a lot of them, and we're getting it on more of the test wells, so we're working towards that goal.
Have we identified any locations, or we should really have a map?
They're on the
Locations.
GIS map.
Yeah, they are.
No, where we really need additional testing.
Well, additional.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right, all right, so
That would be good.
We should really
I'll
establish those
review this
locations.
based on
We came
what,
up in the last discussion, we talked about just having homeowners voluntarily give that information.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a really wise way of doing it, because I have mine done every 2 years by the Suffolk County, and I have all these reports over the history of it, because I'm watching certain chemicals as they approach my property, so I'm concerned about it. So that can be given to the town.
Yeah. So I'm adding, identify areas that need additional test wells, monitoring.
I'm gonna review this
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a big one, so I think everybody should really look at it more in depth.
and edit it. It's 31 under wastewater items. I'll edit it, because I think a lot of this has been,
subject to the disclosure policy of the Department of Health. So we did get, it's essentially a FOIL request for aquifer data over time. And we did get that back in, and we have data up to 2017. So that has been delivered. Yeah, and then move on to asking property homeowners for their water, which we're looking to do. Maintain a database on well samples by tax map number and area. I mean, that we can do with GIS if we can get our ducks in a row. So that's a good recommendation.
Like they said, intern, or several interns over a summer, several
Yeah.
summers. They keep up with them.
Those kids did a lot of work,
Well, they did great,
did
yeah.
a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah.
Two of them work for NASA now, so,
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's good training.
yeah.
Check for research
You have to
papers.
run in a
Yeah.
few minutes, and I know when I do, I'm killing the forum, so I'm just giving you a heads up.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna let you guys, since
I think-
Adrian's gonna have to go.
I think the more controversial aspects are the development rights, so it would be C and D.
Oh, the last two?
Yes, the last two we might want to look at.
Well, we know that we can't have a transfer development right
That
program,
needs to be.
so,
Yeah.
you know, without,
Maybe we take that out.
Yeah.
yeah, that's not a problem.
Right.
Let's see. All right, so definitely look those over. And then I'm just gonna show you, I went through, don't get nauseous, I'm gonna scroll. So I went through the Southold recommendations. And so some of them lined up with recommendations we had already made. So I labeled them our, consider mandatory water conservation measures for residential irrigation. That was our goal number 2. So I went through and I numbered ours. And for some of these, I did open the Southold plan and I added some of the meat that they had after their recommendation. So for example, number 4, support the Peconic Estuary Program initiatives for water conservation practices. I kind of put down what they had. So Peconic Estuary Program has initiated a homeowner rewards program to provide water conservation opportunities to homeowners within the Peconic Estuary boundaries that surround the impaired water bodies. And Suffolk County Water Authority has a similar program for people on their water systems. And there's like a rebate program. It's, if you have low flow sinks and toilets, you can get so much money back, that kind of thing. Just as an example of what Southold added to these to really flesh them out. That's kind of, I think, what NOAA is looking for is we have this item, but what are the things we can do to make that item happen? Or what are the support systems for that item? So we need to fill in some of that. And some of these I just kind of modified. So support the work of the town of, I wrote Shelter Island Water Advisory Committee and Conservation Advisory Committee, which focuses on and promotes the implementation of water quality and water conservation goals and objectives of the town. So some of these action items could kind of be tweaked to work for our committees. Just ideas going through.
An aquifer protection overlay district.
So the way they did it, it's an approach that provides guidance to landowners and user groups on how to better protect the groundwater. So effective management within the district ranges from voluntary changes in homeowner choices to application and disposal of pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and use of land use controls in areas within sensitive groundwater recharge areas. So it's a range of education, voluntary things, and some regulation.
And some regulation.
So I did go through and I pulled some of the things that I thought were helpful.
We have the STOP program too.
Mm-hmm.
We label that in there.
I don't know if I did. I'm just gonna make a note of it here. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
So I did go through and I made additional comments on the Southold plan on how it could apply to us. And if some things didn't
This is great.
apply,
Thank you.
you're welcome. I just sort of like crossed it
Yeah, that
out.
was-
So develop land preservation tools for Plum Island. Okay, well, we don't really, that doesn't work for us, so I deleted it. The Suffolk County Water Authority Groundwater Guardian Program, I said we can look into it. I don't know what it is. We have our own MS4. They have an MS4 program. Everybody does. So I did make some notes. I added some extra information to some of these items that seemed interesting, but I wasn't sure what they really meant.
I'm sorry to be so stupid, but Is this, do we have?
This is Southhold. You have this? I did put it in the
Okay.
SharePoint. We can re-email it out.
Okay, thanks.
Is this online?
Google it,
Yeah.
and they actually have a separate website for their comp plan.
But you,
Southhold Town
Yeah.
Comprehensive Plan. You can
Right.
but your notes are on the
Yeah.
website, so we can.
This is all in your SharePoint. We're looking at the SharePoint document.
Great.
So it's all in there. And then, you know, some things that they do, we don't really do, like, they are outlined by soils, like soil type, soil content. We don't have that kind of description for ourselves. So when, some of it wouldn't apply, but some of it's pretty interesting. Some of it we don't really need to do because like the CAC just updated our native checklist.
Good luck tomorrow.
But yeah,
So, motion to adjourn or?
no, it's okay.
Sorry, sorry for
You're
being late.
good. So yeah, look through it. I definitely went in and added stuff, and Southhold has their whole plan on their website. Very easy to search.
Because we no longer have a quorum, we no longer have a meeting. a public
Correct.
meeting, So we have to disperse.
So
We no longer have a meeting on, so you can talk, but it's not cool.
Yeah, so I can
we're gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Sorry?
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?